When we started making this game, we were, I was in some meetings and we were like, yeah, we're going to hire experts. We're going to build a team dedicated to anti-cheat. And I was like, oh, awesome. So we just won't have any cheaters then. That's great. And the engineers in the room and the people that are a little more involved in that kind of stuff were like, oh no, this will be a war of attrition forever, right? It's always fighting. You put out some ways to block cheaters, and then they'll get around that, and you'll keep working on it. The best you can do is to try and stay ahead of it. We can't share real details about stuff because you don't share your strategy, your war strategy with the enemy, right? I can say a couple things though. I think this is a really important topic. We are currently looking into what we can do for players that have had their game impacted by a cheater. This might look something like retroactive loss forgiveness, where you'll get your RP back if we find that you had a cheater in your ranked match, something like that. So that's kind of small, but I think that'll be meaningful. We're also working on a feature where if you report a cheater, you'll get notified that the person that you reported was banned. And that just sort of helps you know that if you're reporting cheating does something and that you did something. We're also ramping up enforcement on players who get boosted by cheaters. So we already can detect this, but it's a lot of manual tracking for us. So we're streamlining our pipeline so that we can make that detection a lot more effectively. So that'll get better. And then lots of things that we just can't talk about, or really boring things. Like, oh, we were making tools so that we can track stuff, so that we can figure out what we're how we're doing. And I get lots of questions on Twitter and stuff about SMS verification to log in or to play ranked. You won't see that from us soon, and that's just that we've done our research and we've decided that there's better ways to spend our efforts that actually get better results. So, but I do think it's just important to for players to know we've got people on this full time, right? Anytime that there feels like there's a surge, and we know that it's just so frustrating that someone was in your match, it's like there might be a surge, but then there'll be a surge of bans the next day, right? So we're keeping at it. The team seeks it out largely themselves. I mean, not exclusively. Like, we've got I don't know, devs are on Twitter, they're on Reddit, they're on different forums. I'm on Twitter, I'm talking to a bunch of people. There's a number of features that have gotten into the game that came just exclusively from fan suggestions. Right? Like the damage counter that went live in season 8 was something that we saw on Reddit enough, and we were like, you know what, let's just do that. Sometimes we have to think about how that affects the game in certain ways that might not be obvious to players. So there's a lot of conversation. That's why there might be something that seems easy and seems obvious. Like, players want this, right? It comes to us really quickly. Like, we find it, the community team picks it up sometimes really quick and gives it to us. And we talk about it. Something like the damage counter is an example. It was like, well, is this going to make people, first off, like, what the designer's job will start to think about, how can this be used in a negative way, or ways that we don't think about. And so, like, are people going to start poking from a distance more and start sniping more? How's that going to change the way the game plays, for the better or worse? We just have to think it through. We put in the game, we test it, we talk about it a lot, a bunch of designers, chatting about it. And then eventually we decide, like, okay, this is worth doing. And we just have to be really careful about stuff most of the time. I always really appreciate whenever people are able to express to us a problem that they're having.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times people's first inclination is to go to telling us their solution, which sometimes is great. Sometimes it's like, that's a really creative solution. We're going to think about that, or we're going to just do it sometimes. But a lot of times there's so many moving parts of the game and what we should do for what reasons. And a lot of times it's better to just tell us sort of the problem that you're having, part of the experience that you don't like, and then let us chew on it and come up with a way to try and solve it. It's just kind of the the discipline of design really is to try and figure out the right way to solve the problems. And we always have to test stuff against our design goals, right? Like we have certain design pillars that we always try to anchor to. So sometimes there can be an idea that sounds like it would be really good, but in the end, you can test that against like, well, we are a team game. If we do that, then people will not play as a team, and then that will start to spread, and then everyone will be out there by themselves, ruining the experience of trios or whatever. Like you kind of have to think about it in those sort of terms. It's fun to think creatively how we can solve those problems in a different way, because again, if you tell us the problem, then we can go, okay, well, how can we actually solve that problem, instead of if you just tell us your solution, then it's too easy to be like, well, we can't do that. We can't do that thing for these reasons. So I guess that's where the conversation ends there, you know. Last year at this time, at our 1 year anniversary, a little before our 1 year anniversary, and like in January, we were looking at, I got together with a bunch of Chad and a bunch of Chad Grenier, the game director, and a bunch of people, and we're talking about the sort of the goals for 2020. We brought the whole team into the kitchen, which is kind of our big meeting space for the team, and we had a big presentation up, and we were like, this is our plan for 2020. This is where we want the game to be by season 7. It's going to have a brand new map, Olympus, which everyone knew at the time, right? These maps take a really long time to make. It's going to have a vehicle. It's going to have, all these characters. And like, we had all these cool goals. And then that was sort of what drove us throughout the year, is like getting to season 7. And so now we're at that point again. We're looking at 2021. And we're looking at, season 11 at the end of the year. What do we want the game to look like at that point? But also, what sort of your question, what are the priorities for Apex this year? And I think that what's really exciting is that I've talked a lot with Chad about this, and we're really, like, currently Apex is strictly a battle royale, right? But we've built these characters and this world that I think players really want to be in, even if they don't love battle royales, right? So at a really high level, I'll just say that that's something that we want to focus on solving this year. Other ways to play the game.